What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Roxor, and here we do all things card games. Today, I'm doing a little bit of a recap of my experience in the Atlanta Challenge that happened this weekend. I'm a little bit late on this because I actually stayed Monday and drove back Tuesday with my girlfriend. She came along with me, and we did some sightseeing after the event and everything. So yeah, it was a very fun time. So I want to talk about that. Talk about like the promos that we got, the experience overall, how I did, and I'm gonna go over the winning deck, which I thought was wild. And yeah, there's also some interesting news in regards to Pixelborn and getting the cease and desist from Disney Ravensburger. So that's happening. So we'll talk about that as well, since that's kind of come out today. And yeah, we're going to talk about all that stuff. So buckle up. And if you enjoy the content, you enjoy me talking about stuff like this, remember to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me out. All right, let's talk about Atlanta. All right, so first of all, I just want to talk about the deck that I obviously decided to bring to this event. That was Purple Steel. I had been playing the Jafar combo deck for a while, so it's in a similar color, but I felt that Jafar was pretty inconsistent. And while, the games that I won felt really good, but the games that I lost felt really, really bad. A lot of Emerald decks seeing an increase in play, so playing against Ursula Deceiver did not really feel like a fun time. So I wanted to play a deck that, was more consistent. Obviously, Ruby Amethyst, a really, really strong deck going into this tournament. Obviously, the Mim Merlin package, very, very strong. So I wanted to make use of that, but I didn't want to play Ruby Amethyst. I wanted to play a deck that could play well against it, but also play well against other decks. Ruby Sapphire, obviously, Steel Song is one of this deck's, I think, better matchups. And just kind of have something that had a lot of play to it instead of trying to play more polarized matchups. So yeah, so that was the mentality, right? Obviously, again, still running the Mim package, but getting to run really powerful cards like Smee, Along Came Zeus, or Robin Hood. Obviously, Queen's Castle being key in a lot of games I'll talk about. And deciding to run two spell books again for those Ruby Amethyst matchups. They can't answer this card, and so if they're playing slowly, this card does a really good job of getting you across the finish line. So yeah, so in terms of that, I obviously was able to acquire this deck super easily. I had a lot of these cards already, which was nice. I was playing it on Pixelborn, had about an 80% win rate on Pixelborn, so it was feeling really good. The deck submission process was weird where you had to take a picture of your deck or somehow send a picture. So that was really interesting. Obviously, they added an extra option of using dreamborn.inc to submit your deck list as like an additional way. It was optional, wasn't required, but a lot of people did it. And also there's an instance of some people made the mistake of making their deck public. So a lot of there was an influx of decks labeled with the name Atlanta Challenge or something like that. And so that was a little bit of a mishap. I was also surprised that they allowed for that, since again this is an unofficial site. Obviously, it's run by PPG, not Ravensburger, so maybe PPG was okay with it, but maybe Ravensburger wouldn't have been as okay with it. I'm not gonna dig too much into that, but yeah, so that was interesting. But I did end up submitting the deck pretty easily. The day before we drove up. So I took care of it on Thursday or Friday morning or something like that. So I was well prepared. Never want to do any of these kinds of things at the last minute. I think there was a way for you to resubmit, hopefully, and hopefully also just iron out this process more as we go forward. But yeah, coming from CEDH, having to submit by decklist through Moxfield through an online platform that's pretty easy to use. This was a little bit more of a tenuous process, and I feel like we can do a little bit better about decklist submissions while still maintaining, obviously, competitive integrity. Yeah, but then drove all the way up to Atlanta. It was a pretty fine drive. And then the venue was at the Georgia Congress Convention Center or something like that. I'm blanking on the name. But First of all, Atlanta was a nightmare. Both my girlfriend and I were like, all right, let's never come back here. It was really, really hard to get around the city. But eventually, like, we were able to park and make our way into the convention center, but the convention center is a maze. So super, super stressed because really trying to get checked in on Friday so I don't have to worry about it on Saturday. Eventually made our way. We found our other Lorcana people, got checked in, got a promo, which was cool. Apparently is worth money, which I'll talk more about. So got checked in and then ended up going back and getting a good night's rest. And then waking up and making my way to the convention hall Saturday morning, and obviously doing matchmaking or seeding through Melee. Melee went down in the middle of the tournament, which was quite inconvenient. They eventually fixed some things, but yeah, I feel like getting Melee up and running was a big thing. But anyways, aside from that, here is how my tournament went. Spoilers, obviously did not end up making the second portion of competition. Yeah, first of all, easy matchup into Emerald Steel. They seemed like a not a less experienced player, but more of someone that did not know about how to play this matchup. They played the matchup pretty slow. They ended up playing Beasts as well, which was not as should be relatively effective against me. I forget if I had the answer, but I think I just had too much of a lead by that time. So quick 2-0 victory against Emerald Steel. Which I think actually, if you look at, was pretty consistent on. Like I won here and then went 1-1 with 2 other Emerald Steel decks. So I think I performed pretty well against Emerald Steel, which I think this deck should. Robin Hood being a difficult card for Emerald Steel to answer. And then I have a lot of tools to answer their Ursulas. And assuming I can just get out ahead on board before they empty out my hand, or do discussing things with Ursula, I think I can pretty easily win that match. There was a lot of times where I'm hoping for Queen's Castle. Queen's Castle really strong in this matchup, which is pretty obvious. The matchups where Queen's Castle is good is going to be a lot of these Emerald decks, as you'll see. But on the other hand, Emerald Amethyst is an incredibly hard matchup for me. I think it was my worst matchup, and you note that I 2 times faced it and never ever went 2-0 against it. In fact, I got swept by it, which we'll talk about. Here was able to get a game off of them. But definitely one of the harder matchups they have. If they have the crabs to answer my castles, but also they have a lot of disruptive effects that are difficult for me to deal with. Mother Knows Best was a card that I was finding quite annoying throughout the weekend. Even if they weren't sung with Ursula, just bouncing my Robin Hood or bouncing any of the characters that I was playing was pretty tough. As opposed to the Emerald Steel decks, which I believe don't play Mother Knows Best. They play mostly the steel removal. So the steel removal less effective against my cards. Had a really good matchup against Steel Song in round 3. So again, at this point, I'm 5-1 in the tournament, feeling really good. They were playing something like Pride Land, with Pride Lands, with that version of Amber Steel Song. Again, I knew that this deck or this type of Steel Song deck was being played, but I didn't really know the full details of it. So I was a little bit nervous, but this version of the deck did not impress me. Pride Lands felt really awkward in the deck and didn't really seem to work against me. It just kind of sat there and didn't really do anything. My inclination is that it's not really meant to be good against me, against my deck, against Amethyst Steel. It's more for maybe Blue Red or Ruby Sapphire. But I was not particularly impressed with. Again, I'm not dissing the person or the deck, but I was not or the build, I guess I should say. But I was not particularly impressed with Pride Lands in that scenario. So then we were getting to the kind of the tough part of the tournament where we start splitting some games. So again, as some of my friends from Orlando who were there were also kind of warning me of, you can get some wins in the early games, and you can get some sweeps, but once you kind of get into the later stages, you're going to find a lot more splits because you're playing against better players, you're playing against better decks. And that's exactly what happened. And this was pretty rough because I believe in all three of these cases, um, the uh, the die roll was won by my opponent, and people very quickly realized that you're actually supposed to go first in the second game because they explained at the beginning of the tournament that you have better tiebreakers if you win the second game, not if you win the first game. So everyone in these three games, of each one of my opponents, I should say, was choosing that option, and that's exactly what happened. Is I clobbered the first game, won pretty decisively in all of these first games, but then obviously them going first added some extra points to their win potential, I guess I should say, and yeah, they were able to take a game off me. So already at this point, realizing that I need to not even just split, I need to sweep the two games. So start playing a little bit riskier, but also end up playing against two people who just had the nuts. I don't even know how to say it. My Emerald Amethyst player did not miss a single beat. They curved out. They had game two, they had Cursed Merfolk on turn one into two more Cursed Merfolks on turn two, which is possible to deal with, but in my case, I was not able to deal with. The Steel Song player didn't miss a single beat. They had Cinderella turn one every single time, followed by some kind of effective song. They always had the Whole New World. There's just nothing I could do against either of these players that could have increased my win percentage. It was really, really annoying. I ended up conceding early to this player. They were kind of annoying me a little bit in the game, which I won't talk too much about, but mostly the second game. By the time I got halfway through the second game, they were at 11 lore and I was at 0 lore, and I just said, yeah, you know what, I'm out. Um, so I already kind of knew that I wasn't making enough points to get any kind of additional reward besides the promo that we got. So yeah, I kind of just said, yeah, whatever, and conceded early. Um, take with that as you may. And then had a split against Ruby Amethyst. Again, pretty run of the mill matchups all down the line, except for again against these two people here. Um, so ended up 9-9 with 29 points. And this might seem like kind of only okay, and in fact it was. I ended something like 838 out of the roughly 2,000 players, which is only slightly above the 50th percentile or whatever. But if you consider that up until the round 7, where I got right here, I did not have a single time where I got swept. I thought that was pretty good, so I was feeling pretty happy again until those last two, the round 7 and 8, where I just was. They had the nuts. So obviously, if luck was more on my side, could have gone my way. Obviously, playing against Emerald Amethyst twice was not to my enjoyment. I think I would have preferred to kind of dodge that matchup. Did not have a single matchup against Ruby Sapphire or Sapphire Steel. I feel like those were two matchups where I would have really liked to explore being played in. I only played against Steel Song twice. I actually think I would have liked to play against him more. Even though I lost to this person, I think I would have liked to play against Steel Song more. So yeah, played a ton of Emerald Steel, which is a pretty evenly split matchup. So it is what it is. But yeah, so you might look at this and say, oh, pretty upset, right? Obviously did in day 2. But when you think about actually that only I heard this and I was like, oh, wait, actually that's wild. Only 1% of players day 2 or something like that, roughly 1%. So that's pretty wild, right? Only the top 64 players played in day 2. Top 128 got an extra prize, right? But that was it. Right, I don't even think there was, for some reason, people were saying like that even though they quadrupled right the attendance, they didn't really kind of even out the play rewards. So it did feel really top heavy, which as we'll talk about, is not really effective in or does not really play well in a 2-game format. Right. So for me, as you see here, I did pretty well, or I did pretty even, but so I would say I did well, but I was saying to people all weekend I did well, but not well enough. And so yeah, so I think maybe I should have played a different deck that was more polarizing, like Steel Song, like Emerald Amethyst, because yeah, that's really what this format wants you to do. The realization that an 0-2 followed by a 2-0 is more points than going 1-1 twice really hit me hard. That doesn't seem right to me. It seems antithetical to what they want the format to be like, right? It seems like that if you go 1-1 and then you go 1-1 again, you should be in a pretty good even scenario to if you went 2-0 and then got 0-2, right? Those two scenarios should be about even, which is not the case. At least that's my assessment. And then the whole thing with the second game being better tiebreakers also just seemed really silly. Because again, the whole point of this system was to eliminate the impact of the dice roll, but that's essentially, not what happened. As again, I lost the die roll, and so my opponents chose to go first in the second game. I won the first one, they won the second one, and that really left me feeling pretty bad. So all the people that I talked to this weekend, or sorry, yeah, the past weekend, pretty not big fans of the 2-game format. That being said, the store that I go to is still doing the 2-game format for their kind of league or for their kind of nights. I don't know where we go from here. I really would prefer that we not have this system become too ingrained, because I think if we keep going and we keep going and the system keeps going, it's going to be harder and harder to change. Some people mentioned that with the cards getting better and better and the sets, the gameplay going faster and faster, maybe right, we'll be able to switch back to a 3-game format. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't like the 2-game format. I really think that we should just have a 3-game format, maybe with a small sideboard or something like that. I don't think the 2-game format. I kept an open mind. I want that to be clear. I did keep an open mind. I said, you can check back on my other videos. I wasn't immediately like, oh, this is going to be terrible. I kept an open mind, was excited to try it out. I tried it out. I don't think it's good. I would prefer something else. I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah. Next, we'll talk about the actual winning deck. All right. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the actual deck list that won the actual tournament. It was won by Joshua Poulter. I hope I'm saying that right. I heard it on the stream, but I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It's pretty wild. Amber Amethyst is a color combination that I have been a big fan of, but not in this way. And I had to read a bunch of these cards, as we'll talk about. So yeah. It's also a 60 character deck. I'll also add it as well. So yeah, but watching this deck in action was super cool, even though there are some really, really weird things about this deck that we'll talk about. And they kind of also, the creator of this deck did an interview. They kind of acknowledged some of the weaknesses or some of the faults of this deck. They weren't presenting it as a perfect deck, which I really respect. But yeah, in that regard, it's unclear exactly if this deck was built precisely for this format. They didn't indicate that in their interview, but it definitely appears as though this deck was built with the meta in mind, right? This was not just, oh, here's a cool deck that I've been playing, for forever. It was pretty clear that this was built with, right, Atlanta in mind. Was trying to think about what type of decks they expect to see and play around that. Yeah, so this is Amber Amethyst Mufasa. I guess it is a Mufasa deck. I don't know if it's called a Mufasa deck, but it has a lot of really interesting engines going on. But obviously the really big takeaway here is just, first of all, that it's still running rabbits, goats, foxes, and snakes. We have and crabs. Where's the crab? Crabs. Merlins and Mims. Still present here. Such a strong core engine to play around. But there's a lot of other pieces here that we can talk about. So the most notable thing about this deck, before we talk about the notable things, I do just want to mention Mufasa, because this is a card that has been on kind of a tier 2 of the meta, right? The ruby versions of this, or the green versions, the emerald versions of Mufasa. Seeing a little bit of play here and there, but never really topping tournaments, never really making a name for themselves. I think this card's really awesome. I really like this card. It's really good into decks with that are trying to remove your board, because this essentially functions as 2 characters in 1. So it can be really strong when it works, but unfortunately requires you to play a certain amount of characters, right? You can't play too many non-character cards in a Mufasa deck, or you risk missing. So yeah, super nice, and you'll see kind of the ways in which Mufasa can kind of do things. But the big thing about this deck is Fairy Godmother. Both the Fairy Godmother Pure Heart and Fairy Godmother Mystic Armor, the Floodborn. Both of these cards I had to read. When I was watching the stream, or when I saw the deck list, I said, what are these cards? I do not know what these cards do. I had to look them up on like the companion app and read what they did. So Fairy Godmother here says when you play a character named Cinderella, you can exert chosen character. So there's 4 copies of Ballroom Sensation here that help to basically act as an extra copies of a Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, giving you that kind of exert effect whenever you play Cinderella, and just being a 3-cost inkable 3/4/1. So not a bad card by any means, but obviously requires you to play Cinderellas to make it work. But the big one here is actually Fairy Godmother Mystic Armor, the Floodborn, 5-cost inkable 3/4/2, shift for 2, and it has, whenever this character quests, your characters gain Challenger 3, and whenever this character is banished in a challenge, it goes back to your hand this turn. So really interesting effect. Very cool, cheap shift cost. So again, it can kind of flex it into some turns, but obviously can also just hit it off Mufasa or be played straight up, and can really do some work in games. I actually played against it the other night with some friends. And as you can see here, it is commanding a $9 price point. It didn't used to be that way. After seeing this deck, a lot of people rushing to buy this card, which is pretty interesting. This dynamic happens in Magic a lot, but yeah. So this is kind of an interesting core of the deck, the Fairy Godmothers and the Cinderellas, but you'll also note something really interesting here. As I said, 60 characters. This is a Singer 3 Cinderella. There are no songs in the deck. There are no songs, period. There are no actions, period. No items, no locations. 60 characters. But the interesting thing is that with cards like Fairy Godmother, Peter Pan's Shadow, and Pinocchio, some of your cards kind of function as cards, as spells, right? Or actions, whatever you want to call them. Just having ways of doing things with your characters that to supplement your game plan. So again, we saw this in action, and it did actually do the thing. Did quite well. So playing the Fairy Godmother, it's pretty hard to kill with Madame Mim snakes or things like that. And then just using Cinderella to exert key characters, take them out, can challenge into Crab, as they talked about. So the stats on Fairy Godmother and its ability work out really well. The other thing that we got going on here is Perdita. This is a card that was seeing a little bit of play, or as it was experimenting, people recognizing this is a powerful card, but really was not making too much of a splash because it was struggling to find a deck that it worked in. Mufasa tried it for a while. Ruby Mufasa, excuse me, tried it for a while, but it really wasn't working out. Right, isn't in the deck, isn't in those decks, isn't in my version of Mufasa either. And so it's interesting to see it here where it has quite a bit of functionality So there's quite a few characters here that we would like to get back with. So first of all, actually the Cinderella, where you can have your fairy godmother in play Perdita, and buy back one of your Cinderellas, and that counts as playing it, so you trigger your fairy godmother. We also have Chernobog's followers, Pascal and Cusco. These are just kind of good, cheap characters, that provide some additional value. Chernobog's followers and Cusco drawing a card. Pascal having evasive, meaning basically acting as a sorcerer's spellbook in most cases, giving you a lure every turn, but also can be used with the crab to answer some really powerful evasive cards. Mini Stylish Surfer, as we talk about often in the Ruby Amethyst decks. And then the other 2-cost card here in Piglet, Pooh Pirate Captain, just a good quester. One of the better Amethyst cards Amber cards that I think is good for aggressive decks. You can also rebuy Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, but that's obviously a more controlling game plan. But that's really where this deck is super interesting, where, again, it kind of looks like it should be an aggro deck, but again, with the combination of Fairy Godmother, Mystic Armor, and Perdita, this deck really can grind into the late game and kind of play that kind of challenging role that the Amethyst package really allows you to do. So obviously we talked about the Snakes, the Mims, and the Merlins. We got obviously the 4 copies of Rapunzel here, seeing that even in this case, Rapunzel is still one of the better Amber cards in the game. We talked about Mufasa, Perdita, all these guys. There's one Chernobog for just that rebuy effect. Just if the game goes long, you want to be able to just shuffle them back into your deck, draw them again, and go from there. And then the card here that really makes me think that they planned this deck out for this tournament is actually Peter Pan's Shadow. This is a card that is often seen as a tech against Ruby Amethyst. It's just really good into their Madame Mim. Sorry, not the Madame Mims. It's really good into Mini Stylish Surfer, but also really good if you have your own Madame Mim Foxes, so that both of these cards can get evasive, and then it's really difficult for your opponent to answer these cards in a productive way. So yeah, if you end up watching the kind of the finals against Ruby Amethyst, you can really see how effective this deck can be against Ruby Amethyst. So really like to see that, and like to see this cool deck do its thing. So initially I was excited by that, but then I also had the thought of, okay, well, wait a minute. We're going into set 4 immediately after this. This deck is not really going to have an impact, or this deck winning the tournament is not going to have as impactful of a result on the meta as, right? We're just going into a new meta where there's all these different decks. This deck might not really be a big contender afterwards. But people seem to disagree with me. Again, Fairy Godmother Mystic Armor is shooting up in price. Get your copies now while you can. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Fairy Godmother will be a powerful card in the upcoming meta. That remains to be seen. All right, so next up, I kind of wanted to talk about the kind of how I felt about the tournament overall, and the side events as well, which I'll talk about. So for me, again, as a Magic player coming into this and trying to compare it to some of the Magic fests that I've gone to in the past, I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the promos, or at least I guess the expected value based on the promos and the other things happening at this event. So simply for entering into the event, I received this Dragonfire promo card, which is currently retailing for an average about $200 a card. Pretty wild. Even after a lot of people were selling them off, vendors were still buying them for a considerable price. I decided to keep mine. I still have mine in my possession somewhere. I think it's in my binder or something. As well as the Flotsam and Jetsam promo and the Scrooge McDuck promo that I received as well. All these promos going for a considerable price, higher than I would have expected for these kind of remedial cards. But it seems that Disney people are crazy. I don't know how else to say it. Disney people are crazy. Again, being not a crazy Disney person, I'm a little bit confused. Or just like, not really being able to get into the mind space of these Disney people that are paying so much for these cards. Uh, I would not pay this much money for a Dragonfire. Anyways, you do you. But yeah, considering that going to a Magic tournament and I would receive a promo that would be maybe 10, maybe $20 after paying a considerable price for the tournament. It was a nice change of pace to be able to get this card and go, hey, I didn't do well in the tournament, but I still walked away with a card that's worth like $200. Obviously, the people that ended up getting the Let It Go promo, the Cinderella promo, and the Rapunzel rewards obviously made a lot more money. Those cards going for quite a considerable margin to show off the price of the, or at least the estimated price of the Rapunzel foil here. As well as the Mickeys that are serialized, they have a number on them. That I have no idea what those are going for, obviously. But for someone like me who just went for the fun of it, or at least just trying my best, it was really nice to go to this and kind of be immediately rewarded. So yeah. And that brings me to, speaking of being rewarded, that brings me to the side events. So I went really early the next day for side events. There was this huge kerfuffle with the side events. They had way too many people, not enough events. So there's a huge backup, issues with Melee. Again, I'm not going to get into all of this. I feel like I'm repeating myself. But that eventually got sorted out. I was able to do a draft. My girlfriend got an attendee pass, which gave us some prize tickets along with it. So that, plus both of us doing well enough in the draft to earn enough tickets to eventually get 2 copies of this Rapunzel promo. First of all, it looks beautiful. All these promos look really nice. If you haven't seen the Dragon's Fire one in person, it looks beautiful. Foiling is great. Foiling on these cards is great. So yeah. And, initially I was like, okay, cool. I'll get these, whatever. No one's going to actually buy them though, right? I go up to a vendor, just one of the random ones. I say, hey, are you buying these? And they say, yeah, we'll give you $200 a piece. I sold both of them instantly. So yeah, both my girlfriend and I were very happy to kind of make some money back, kind of paying for the hotel, or kind of paying for, making our way all the way out there. So it was that expected value, right? Just for, we did one event, we did one draft. That felt really good. So if the promo value continues to be like this, I might have to go to some more events because, again, as I said, the expected value is there for these events. It's not quite the same as it is for Magic. So yeah. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is Pixelborn, the kind of unofficial online platform developed solely by Pavel here. So again, props to them for doing this. It was a really big help for me in preparing for this tournament. It was also the main way that I was bringing content to this channel for Pixelborn. Obviously don't have a setup for tabletop, right, or paper cards or whatever. But we knew that this was only temporary. We knew that since it was unofficial, it was likely to get some kind of cease and desist from Disney. And that's exactly what's happened. Said a Disney representative contacted them and basically said, stop. And Pavel making the correct decision, the safe decision for them to respect their wishes and stop Pixelborn as of June 16th. So have a little bit, but yeah, not Pixelborn will be shutting down soon. The server itself will still be here if you want to look at deck lists or whatever, but yeah, not staying around. Some people upset by this, but most people recognizing, this was unofficial. It does violate copyright, unfortunately. So not much to be done there. But it does beg the question of, how serious are Ravensburger about continuing support for Lorcana? We obviously have the tournaments right going on. Are they serious enough to make a digital client themselves? And where will the game, or how else will the game evolve without a way for kind of people to have some kind of entry point into the game? For me, it was really nice to be able to show off this to people, to say, hey, if you think you want to try out the game, do Pixelborn first. It's free to use. It's pretty easy to get started on. And right from there, people kind of realizing, hey, I do like this game. And that is kind of a window or an outlet into, paper play. So yeah, but it's interesting to see where we'll go without that. There's still a lot of people that don't know about this game. So, and right, if we don't have Pixelborn, how are they going to try out the game? So, yeah, it's interesting to see. Again, I hope that this does not stifle Lorcana's development. But obviously, again, Disney and Ravensburger seems to think it's the correct thing to do for them. Pavel making the correct choice for them. But yeah, so might make a few more videos on Pixelborn in the coming weeks. Of obviously we have set 4 coming its way into the meta. So wanna do some content about that before we do that. But yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do about Lorcana content going forward if I don't have Pixelborn to use. So yeah, I'll leave that there. All right, guys, and that is going to do it for me and this video. I hope you guys enjoyed my discussion of the Lorcana challenge. I guess they're calling it DLC, which I think is kind of weird. But yeah, congrats to Joshua here. What do you guys think of this list? It's pretty wild in my opinion, but again, it's clearly worked. So congrats to them. And yeah, remember, if you enjoy the content, you want to see more Lorcana content, or if you are just an avid card gamer of any kind, this is a great place to be. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and thanks again for watching. See you guys in the next video.